Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I am back with another video for Picket Studios. Today I'm super excited to be sharing with you a new release from them. This is Sweet Autumn Holiday, which is one of my illustrations. It has stamps and dies. This one here is the, hold on, it's a mouthful for me to say, Autumn Bounty Beauty, something like that. I apologize. And in addition to that, I'm using Leaves Falling for You, and I pulled out this autumn die, but I didn't end up using it. But anyway, so those two illustrations are now available. The wonderful thing that Picket does, which I think is fantastic, is if you buy them together as a bundle, you actually get 10% off. So if you know that you're a person who likes to buy the stamps and dies, because they bundle them together and it's a deal, that's really the best way to go. And then, of course, there's bundles for the whole release too. But anywho, so we really wanted to do another cupcake. We came out with the Sweet Holiday cupcake last year for Christmas. And so this one, they are sized very similarly, so that way you could use them together. But the stamp set is actually just a little bit smaller. I think this is a 4x4 stamp set. But anyway, I love the way it came out. Super happy with it. You guys know that I like when things are more versatile, so we included a lot of other images in there. But let's talk about what we're doing in this background. So this is the, hold on, I want to make sure I get it's the 8x8 paper inking palette. Now before I had the 5x6 one, this is the 8x8, and it's just like a very large sheet of photopolymer, and it is tacky and it holds your paper, which is really great for like ink blending like this. I leave my backer sheet on the back of it so it doesn't actually stick to my desk, and then I can turn it any way that I need to without my paper moving. I picked out several fall-ish colors to do a background with. I wanted to build this little kind of like window scene with the little cupcake sitting on the countertop inside and these beautiful autumn leaves kind of falling in the background. I know it is July. I know it is. But if you are a person who likes to get ahead of the game for what you're going to be crafting, you like these types of releases are a little bit needed a little bit earlier on. If you're going to be making them for the season, you have to have time for it to ship to you. So I like to do all of my ink blending twice. So I'm just going right back over the same colors that I've already put down. And I tried to make sure I put colors that will look nice together next to each other. So the pink picked raspberry and the seedless preserves, the mustard seed with the crushed olive and the carved pumpkin. Here, I just wanted to show you, I just went in with a wet microfiber cloth and wiped it right off. It had no issues whatsoever. It cleaned up perfectly. I am a spatter girl. Not everybody is, and that's totally fine. But I like the more interest that the spatters add to the background. So because I use Distress ink, which is reactive with water, I can just spatter with clean water and it will give me some texture. In addition to that, I also used some Perfect Pearls in the color gold. Typically, I would use my liquid gold paper spatter, but honestly, I can't find it, and I'm not really sure what happened to it, but I'm going to have to get on the hunt for it. So since I know that my little scene here is you're only going to be kind of seeing like the center of this particular background, I am just going to stamp them, these leaves, in various positions, and I'm going to stamp them straight down the center so that way you'll be able to see them through the window that we are going to create. So you may have noticed with the title, we're talking about this kind of popped up window, which seems kind of like it would be an easy thing to do, and it is, as long as you don't want to put a frame in. Do you know what I'm saying? If you don't want anything to float in the middle, then it's really easy to just, put foam around the edges. But when you want something in the center, you have to find a way to support that. And so we're going to be talking about that as well. I'm stamping my images in the intense black ink from Picket and then I'm going to color it with my alcohol markers. I decided that I was going to go with a neutral color. So I did like a chocolate cupcake, so a brown base and white frosting. which is so funny because I mentioned that one time on channel and everybody, like there were so many people, I was shocked. It was like, oh, I love chocolate cake with white frosting. I would never even have considered that, honestly. Like if that's on a tray, that's my last option. But if it's on a card, I really like it. I like the neutrals with the white. So as far as adding shading, we are looking for what we call the valleys and the peaks or hills. And in a cupcake wrapper, there are several. So what we're doing is we're going in and adding the darkest color to the valleys, and that will force the peaks or the hills to look like they are sticking up because they will be lighter. So by putting those shadows in those darker areas, we elevate the highlight portion. And you can see that already here. We're only on the second color. You could already see how the parts that are the hills or the peaks are already starting to pop up from the rest of the cupcake wrapper. So I did add more shading to the bottom than to the top because, usually when you're baking something and you're putting it in a cupcake wrapper, whether it's a cupcake or a muffin or whatever, the bottom is darker because it's really, really secure at the bottom. And sometimes at the top, you have these lighter areas that aren't necessarily clinging to the cupcake or muffin for dear life. So I'm going in with my lightest color now. This is an E23, and I'm filling in those peaks. And you can see that we have a really great dimensional image just because of making sure we put the darkness in those valleys. I told you I was doing the cupcake chocolate. For the cupcake, I'm using those same browns because if you used a white cupcake wrapper, then you would see that brown through the white cupcake. So I'm adding a little bit of shadow underneath the frosting and kind of around the sides. And then I also added little dots of the darkest color where where the dips are for the wrapper. And then just for some added texture, I am doing, with the darkest color, just some little dots along the length of that little just sliver of cupcake that we have. And that's just going to add some texture. From there, I'm going to move on to the coloring of the frosting. I told you I was going to do mine white. You can use any grays for this. I chose a warmer gray because I have a lot of warm colors in this card. So to me, that just seemed to make the most sense. And even though we are coloring with grays, we are coloring this to be white. So we're only adding the shadows. You want to make sure that you leave plenty of white so that the object will still look white when we're done. So just some shadows kind of like underneath where the florals are sitting and underneath where the layers of frosting are. For the florals, these are, they're a little bit compact, and they kind of have to be in the same size and the same scale as the other cupcake, which has hellebores on it. This one has a large chrysanthemum and then some anemones. And you'll see this one I'm coloring right now is kind of like the extra little anemones. So you could add that to build up the cupcake even more, or you could use that to stamp a pattern background. You could use it for lots of stuff. I'm going to use it for an accent today. But I chose some darker yellow greens for the leaves in this because I was thinking about that crushed olive that I added to the background. So I basically put together the color palette of my background, and then I am going to reuse that in my cupcake coloring just to kind of make the whole thing more cohesive. So that we're repeating those colors. So for the chrysanthemum, there's a lot of layers here, but don't let that deter you from coloring it. I know smaller images can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming to color, but if you go in and just do not even a full stripe of your darkest color, just like little dots of it, and then work your way out from those little dots to your lightest color, you will be able to create lots of dimension with all of these layers in there. It does not have to be completely perfect. Just try to get some darks in there and then try to reserve some space for your lights at the edge of your petal. That's what that light color is what's going to really create a lot of separation for us, to make sure that it looks dimensional and not like it's one note, or one flat layer. You need those highlights and that shadow to separate them. Now with the anemones, I know that most anemones have a darker kind of like purple, darker blue violet or black center. But there's actually a couple that have yellow centers. One of them I think is called Bridal, which is like a white with a yellow center. But anyway, the one that I really liked when I was looking at them is called a Splendor. Or no, I'm sorry. Is that it? I think it's Splendor. Maybe it's Splendid. It's one of those two. But it is like it's a bright yellow in the center, and then it is like a pinkish purple on the outside. With that said, honestly, mine are a bit more pink than purple, like the flowers are in real life, but I did want to repeat that again, that pink that we put into the background, and also give something that was going to be complementary to this purple and the green that we have going on. Same rules apply for adding shading. We're adding very little bit of dark, kind of where the petals are gathered in the center, and then where one petal is laying on top of the other. We're also adding shadows there. We're making sure that as we move into our third color, that while we are going over everything and making sure it blends really nicely, we're still leaving just a shred of white at the tips, for our actual lightest color to help with that separation between the layers of petals, but also between each individual flower, since they are colored the same color. I am going to repeat that same color combination with this one that's over here, this little two that's going to go in the front. In hindsight, I probably could have done the mum like a white or something else, because there isn't, my mom is definitely more violet than my background. I think it still came out okay, but these are just things that I think about afterward, when I'm kind of reviewing what I made. Not everybody does that. It's not even necessary to do that. It's just something that I do. As far as the leaves go, I did go a little bit unconventional. In the fall, I typically do, like when I'm coloring leaves for a fall or an autumn card, I typically do blend them, so that there are a couple of different colors, green to yellow to orange to red. But I didn't have any red in my card, and I didn't want it to not match. So I chose to do my leaves a dark green, a mid-tone green, a bright yellow, and then the light and dark mid-tones that we used for the pink. It is a little bit out there. It's what do they call it? A little bit of creative license, but it's my card, and I think it looks pretty. I was happy with the way that it came out, so no complaints from me. You know what I mean? So if you're making your card and you're like, hey, I really want there to be some, I don't know, some blue in my leaves, and there's not necessarily blue in the leaves in reality, it's your card. If it's gonna work for your card design, then you do you, boo. Nobody's going to say anything about it. So once I have those blended out, then I can move on to die cutting everything with its coordinating die cut. All of these in both sets have the coordinating die cuts. So I am going to put those in place and then tape them down with some pixie tape. I am also going to die cut out this arch window, and I always try to position mine in the center of like an A2 size card, so that way I can use the cutout arch on another card. I'm going to tape that down, and then I'm going to get some mirror cardstock. This actually might be the matte gold, brushed gold. Matte gold? I don't know. I'll look and I'll link it below. But this is what I'm going to do my frame out of. So I cut out the larger frame, or the larger arch first, and then I'm going to go in with the slightly smaller frame to create an arch, which is going to create the window. For the leaves here, I'm happy with the way that the background came out, but I need these leaves to be bold enough to complement the leaves that we have that are on white. So I did go back in and add a little bit more color to these. I am going to speed this up in just a little bit because the blending process is exactly the same as you have already seen on the other leaves. So just, again, blending things together that work well. So a dark green to a light green to a yellow to a pink, like that type of behavior. I also did try to stick to like where I put the green down on the card when I was doing the ink blending. I tried to put the green marker there, and then the same with the yellow and the pink. This is definitely sped up. I don't color this fast. But anywho, so talking about the window, there are several different ways that you can make this card. You could turn this card into a light up card. You could turn this card into a shaker. Any of those things, like with the light up card, you would use vellum to help diffuse the light. With the shaker, obviously you would have acetate to hold the bits in. But sometimes we just want to make a card that does not have those extra interactive elements, that is just really pretty, and we have a frame in the center. So I am using this piece, I think it's plum cardstock, and I am going to line it up with this window again. Originally, I thought I was going to do the background as white, but I just really didn't like that. So I'm going to switch it up to this plum color, and then I die cut out the window. The reason that I chose to do the window again instead of one of the arches is because this way I know that my window frame arch will fit perfectly back inside that die cut. For my sentiment, I am doing some gold heat embossing on white. So I treated it with my anti-static tool. I stamped it down in a gold pigment ink, and then I am going to use some gold embossing powder to go ahead and heat set that and make it all nice and shiny. There's something magical with all heat embossing, but especially with metallics. They're so pretty. And again, I will cut these out with their coordinating die. So back to the window. If you're gonna like do any of those things, like I said, you don't necessarily have to worry about it sagging in the middle. But if you wanted to do an open frame like I want, either you have to cut teeny tiny little strips but put back behind each one of these lines in the window, or you have to put something back there like acetate for it to stick to. Here's a little trick that you can use if you want to pop up your window and you don't want it to be sagging in the middle. So I've turned over the top of my card flat, and then I turned over my window directly inside of that. And now I am using tape to tape the window to my door frame, or to my card frame. So to my door frame, that's so silly. Anyway, to my card frame. And I'm doing this so that you're not going to be able to see it on the outside, but it will securely hold that die cut frame to the back of my card front. This would be something that you could do, like if you wanted to do a shaker, you could still do it this way, and then you would just put the foam all around it, which we're going to do here in just a second. But basically, doing it this way, you still run the risk that there's going to be a sag in the middle unless you cut like little teeny tiny pieces to go along the center. And I don't know about you, but that drives me insane. So here I've cut this gold frame to go over top. I've turned it back over. The frame kind of hides the white frame, so it looks like it's kind of like a gold painted frame with the white that you would normally see inside a window. And then I also cut a small piece of dark brown. I think this is, I was going to say wood stock, but I don't think that's right. It's wood something, dark something. I don't know. Anyway, I'll link it. But I just cut a very thin strip, and then I glued that to the bottom. I then turned it over and trimmed off anything that was overhanging. This is going to give us a nice place for our cupcake and the other flowers to sit. So I'm popping this up. I am using the extra wide foam tape from Picket Fence. This is a thicker foam tape. It's, made for shakers, for lighting apparatuses, things like that. It is much thicker. I typically cut it with my Spellbinders 4-inch non-stick detail scissors. But so here, this would be like, this is how you would go about it if you wanted to, do a shaker or whatever. In order for us not to have to do the piece down the middle and it won't be, sagging and stuff when you go to mail it, this is how we're going to do it. So I laid it on top and then I'm going to arrange all of my items, but I did not peel off the backer. The backer is still intact, so it is not stuck down to the back of the card. And I wanted it lifted up personally because I wanted there to be some distance between the falling leaves and the cupcake. So just like there would be if they were, if it was sunset outside and leaves were falling down. So I put some glue on the back of this little flower. I'm going to use it to kind of just barely hold all of this together, so that way I can turn around and put glue on the back of all of it. And this, when I put it down, when I glue it down, I'm only gluing it to those top pieces. I am not gluing it to the background. And you'll see I'm not going to put very much pressure on it, just kind of like one little finger here and there. And the reason that is because I want it to stick to the frame. I don't want it to stick to the background, but I need the background there so I know where to place everything to make it fit. Does that make sense? So now these, the sentiment is die cut out. The blessings I did tuck behind the flowers just a little bit, not so much that it's illegible, but enough that I could get the other ones in there without having a problem. And these ones, the birthday and the sending, I'm just adhering them with liquid glue just to the crossbar in the window. So then once I have those in place, I can then flip over this whole thing. And now see on the bottom there, I was just making sure my leaf was secure. Now we have all of this surface area that we can add so much more foam tape to. If you had adhered it down right from the beginning, there's no way to get foam tape into the center. But if you wait until after you have basically adhered your whole card together like we did here, now we can put foam tape behind each and every one of these elements that will make it more secure and guarantee that it doesn't sag in the middle. So you see, I'm just putting it behind the sentiments, behind the flowers, behind anything that will hide it. I'm going to put some foam tape down to make sure that my card is super secure and there's no sagging in that window frame. Another thing that you can do, which I do very often for things like this, when you're doing, that kind of window frame with the pop-up, you release all your backing paper, and then I add liquid adhesive to the back of mine. Not because the foam tape needs it to adhere. It doesn't. It's super sticky. But the liquid glue buys me a little time to make sure that I can get it right and wiggle it around. So I find I have the best luck if I stand up from my desk and look directly down to get my card right on top of where it needs to go and everything's lined up. And then I can just squish it down like I normally would. Our window is popped up. Our background is set back, by probably a good 1/8 of an inch. And now it has lots of dimension and texture, not just from the coloring, but from being popped up as well. I don't love the white outline on any dyes really. So I typically go in and color them, make them blend into the background. One thing of note, I obviously do not have a gold, shiny gold pen or marker to use for the parts that are sitting on the frame. For those ones, I use a Y26, which is actually called mustard, but it helps it blend in pretty well. For the rhinestones, to make, to tie everything together and of course add some more shine, I used the Speed of Light gemstones. These ones are kind of color changing. They have ones that go from pink to yellow to orange to green, and that totally matched the vibe we had going on with this card. So those are the ones that I picked. I added a little bit of clear glitter, and then I'm going to go in and add just a couple of white accents to the flowers to help them kind of be the star of the show. I hope, especially if you're new to card baking, that this was helpful for how you can make sure your card is secure and still get that popped up window without, just a lot of extra work and aggravation. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.